We're not done with this verse, but we're going to talk about the omniscience of God, the knowledge of God. If you want to put in your notes, the doctrine of the knowledge of God. In case you're wondering what omniscience means, I think you should know this already. We've gone over this many days. Omniscience means all knowledge, knowledge about all things. God knows all the knowable at once, simultaneously. We know things here and there by sequence. We must learn things here and there. But God knows all things at once. All things are in God's mind simultaneously. Everything, every occurrence, every good thing, so to speak, that God has made, every bad thing that God has made, everything, all events in human history, both insignificant and significant, etc. He furthermore knows all the what-ifs, the alternatives to the facts. What would happen if I married a different man? I married the wrong man, I don't love him, and all this. He knows exactly what would have happened if you would have married a different person. What would have happened if you weren't born? What would have happened if you would have attended UCR instead of UCLA? I don't know. He knows exactly what would have happened if Hitler would continue invading Dunkirk instead of retreating. He would have eliminated that British expeditionary force and the French, and there would be no resistance thereafter. They would have won all Europe. But only God knows what happens there. So he knows what would happen if Ukraine would not resist so wonderfully right now, fighting back against Russia. Russia would have taken over Ukraine, and what's next thereafter? He knows all the what-ifs. Okay, so God knows perfectly, eternally, and simultaneously all that is knowable, both the actual, the facts, and the possible, the alternatives. Such perception is totally compatible with His divine essence. God is eternal, His knowledge is eternal. God is sovereign, His knowledge is infinitely superior to angelic or human knowledge. Unfortunately, us as human, we come to the point in our arrogance that we think we're smart. So smart. We think we know better than God. And this is our problem. Satan, he thought he was as smart as God. That's the reason why he did what he did, and he's still going at it. But us, we also have inside of us that potential in our arrogance to think we're as smart as God. Some people, their arrogance has reached the utmost, the maximum, the ultimate, in thinking that they are God. Okay. Therefore, the omniscience perceives the free as free, the necessary as necessary, together with all its causes, conditions, and relations, as an indivisible system of things, every link being essential to the whole. So in other words, he sees all these things I just mentioned as an indivisible system of things, every link being essential with the whole. You cannot mess with one without confusing the whole thing. Omniscience knows the alternatives of your life and all of history. It knows the probable as well as the actual. It knows the true as well as the possible. God knows all that would be involved in every case where the decision or thought or action of man would be different from reality. So he knows what would have happened if there was a different decision making and how that would affect the outcome. That would have changed the whole outcome of many things. Now, there are three categories of the knowledge of God. First of all, the self-knowledge of God. Second, the omniscience of God. Third, the foreknowledge of God. And I just introduced this a little while ago, because you're going to find a lot about proginosko, foreknowledge of God. And this is a matter of much confusion. People know enough Greek to say, proginosko and all this, and confuse it with all the categories of knowledge. But first, let's speak about self-knowledge. Really quick, I'm not going to take much time. The whole lesson on omniscience, as I did with the doctrine of love. Self-knowledge. This is knowledge about himself. It is both subjective and objective. Now, what I mean by subjective and objective, I don't mean to say that it is subjective in terms of sin or emotion or pettiness or, all that. I'm talking about knowledge about himself. Here's the Father. Here's the Son. Here's the Holy Spirit. All having the same exact essence. Essence. Let's look at one part of his essence. And this is knowledge. Let's put self-knowledge. Yeah, let's just put knowledge. God knows himself. The Father knows himself. The Son knows himself. And the Holy Spirit knows himself. Everything about his essence. This is the subjective knowledge. Furthermore, the Father knows the Son. The Son knows the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit knows the Son. And the Holy Spirit knows the Father, and you get the point. And this is the objective self-knowledge. So subjective self-knowledge is knowledge about himself. The Father knows himself. The Son knows himself. The Holy Spirit knows himself. Objective self-knowledge is the Father knows the other members of the Trinity, and you can say the same thing about the Son and the Holy Spirit. This self-knowledge is before the decrees. This was functioning before the decrees. So let's put omniscience here, yes, and self-knowledge. He had to know himself. God always knows himself. He knows himself very well. He knows himself perfectly. He had to know himself so that he knows that he can develop this system without messing it up or it losing out of control and then it all going into shambles. This thing that we call creation, both angelic and human. I know I keep on mentioning the angels. I should put it in another computer or in another program here, but let's just keep it like this. Okay? This is self-knowledge. While foreknowledge is the print of, so self-knowledge and omniscience precede the decree, the computer, the insertion into the computer. It precedes the decree. Precede the decree. Foreknowledge is the printout about the decrees. So foreknowledge is limited. It's knowledge only about believers and the printout of the decrees. Yes, you can argue, yes, foreknowledge about inside the computer. Once you insert them in there, foreknowledge also knows the computer. But yes, the printout, foreknowledge has to do with after the decrees have been inserted in the computer. So foreknowledge is limited. Self-knowledge and omniscience were functioning before the computer, before the insertion into all these facts into the computer. Foreknowledge functions after, in the printout, after they've been inserted and in the printout. Omniscience deals with knowledge about both the actual and the probable, and deals with the programming, while foreknowledge deals with the printout of the programming, the result. As we know that omniscience did not insert the probable, he only inserted the facts. The fact is you were born. The alternative is, what if you were not born? He did not insert into the decrees the fact that you were, what if you were not born? He only inserted the facts. The facts is that Hitler lost. The fact is that Putin is being a loser right now. He's not losing, right? He's not winning right now. The fact is that China during the communist regime was a fiasco. The fact is that, yes, you get the point. He only inserted the facts into it, not the what-ifs. So the computer, the decrees only deals with the facts, the realities, not the probables, the alternatives. So, while omniscience knows all decisions and thoughts and actions of all humanity, foreknowledge knows the results, the insertion into the divine decrees, and the printout. Once the omniscience inserted into the decrees, boom, foreknowledge comes in. Then the printout occurs. Okay. The foreknowledge of God makes nothing certain. Keep that in mind. It only recognizes what is certain. The foreknowledge of God makes nothing certain. It only recognizes what is already certain. what has been inserted into the decrees, and the result, the printout. Foreknowledge knows the results. Since the divine decrees establish certainty, nothing can be foreknown until it is decreed. Again, I said foreknowledge is limited. It is only knowledge about believers in the printout. Believers only in the printout. Nothing can be foreknown by the foreknowledge of God until it is decreed, until it is inserted. That's why I say that before the computer, the insertion of the facts into the computer, self-knowledge of God and omniscience were functioning. Once they inserted into the computer all at once, simultaneously, of course it happens simultaneously, we have to think in terms of sequence. What did God insert first as logical progression? Because we need to understand these things in this way. Once he inserted into the decrees, this is when foreknowledge comes in. All right? Since the divine decrees establish certainty, nothing can be foreknown until it is decreed. Foreknowledge is knowledge about the decrees only. God foreknows all events that are certainly futuristic because his omniscience have first of all decreed them. So the foreknowledge, even though the printout is not, say that year 2027, 2028, say that the printout is not occurring yet. 2027 is next year, so it's not occurring yet. We're currently in the year 2026. Foreknowledge already knows those because the omniscience already inserted it into the computer. The information is inside the computer. So foreknowledge is about the printout and what has already been inserted. So foreknowledge knows about what's going to happen in 2030, but only the facts about believers. And in the year 2050, if the rapture has not occurred yet, but only the foreknowledge only knows the facts about believers. Okay? Although everything is simultaneously in the mind of God, omniscience came first. Then his foreknowledge knows only the facts. So everything occurred simultaneously in God's mind, but omniscience came in first. We must think in terms of sequence. And God does that on purpose as well. That's why he writes these things in the Bible like that. So omniscience comes in first. Then foreknowledge knows what the omniscience has inserted. The omniscience has inserted the facts. Foreknowledge only knows the result of the insertion of those facts. While all things were decreed simultaneously, not in phases, not in sequences as we have to do it, Bible passages that teach this, such as Romans chapter 8, verses 29 and 30, are taught in sequences, for they are designed as rationales for the application to our experience. So we must understand these things in sequence. God knows it, knows our limitations, and that's why he writes such verses and those sequences for our benefit, even though all these things happen simultaneously in God's mind. The rational process of these passages are designed in a way that the believer can relate himself to the plan of God. So again, the processes in which he lists them are designed in a way so that you can relate yourself to the plan of God. And we're going to look at Romans chapter 8, verses 29 and 30. So I need you to turn to Romans chapter 8, verses 29 and 30. Yes, this is the famous passage of all things working together for good for those who love God. But we're going to go on to verse 29. I'll explain really quick what verse 28 says and then move on to verse 29. Okay.